For those of you that are not really familiar with working with vector programs, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to the program that we're going to be working on today. I chose this program specifically just because it is highly popular with most people that design for their crafting machines, their Cricut or Silhouette, whatever the case may be, because it is a free program. So I'm going to show that to you right now. It's called Inkscape is the name of the program. You can find it at inkscape.org, and it's a free download. It doesn't take long to download it, and I highly recommend you jump into that and kind of get moving with it if you are a hobby crafter, kind of like I am at the moment. So we're going to be doing a simple design in Inkscape. Basically, we're going to do what is called an island fill on a simple heart design, and I'll show you how to kind of go through the process of putting that together within the program. Now, there's a few things to note before you do get started with doing rhinestones. You're going to need several materials, so if you haven't already kind of figured out what that is, I'll give you a brief rundown on that. You will need the flocking material, you will need Hotfix SS10 rhinestones, you will need transfer tape for acrylic rhinestones, you will need a decal material if you're planning on doing Hotfix transfers for making decals to put on hard surfaces. So if you want to do the car decals, which kind of got the ball rolling here, that's what you would use. And you will also need, I recommend using a dry erase board to work on. It just makes a clean workstation. It's easy to keep up with the stones. And you will also need a rhinestone brush to get started. Now, having said that, you can actually use this design that I'm going to show you how to do with other materials. I've seen people do kind of like a faux rhinestone look using like a foil vinyl material or even glitter, and it still winds up being really cool. So something to think about whenever you're getting into the design aspect of this. You can use it for other things, not just rhinestones. Now, really quickly, I'm going to show you these images that I have here from one of the designs that I've done. This is what the flocking material looks like, and I'm going to show you very quickly kind of what the process is like. So you just lay out your flocking material. If you're doing letters in this example, the flocking material actually does have an adhesive back to it, so when you stick it onto the dry erase board, it's not going to go anywhere until you're ready to pick it up. And then you just brush the stones in, and they fall in with the heat adhesive side down and the faceted side up, so it works really great. It's actually a simple process once you get your template cut. Now, the template is the difficult part. So there were a lot of people in the group that were talking about different rhinestone designing softwares that are out there. One of them that I did hear mention was the one that's offered by the Rhinestone World. It's called the Rhinestone Wizard, and there are probably several others that are out there. I do believe that the Silhouette Design Studio does have a basically an algorithm, so to speak, or script that's run to produce a rhinestone template. Now, I do want to mention that, and I do own the TRW Rhinestone template software, but I do want to mention that no matter what program you do buy to create rhinestones, you will always have to go in and fix and adjust these holes whenever you're creating your design. There is no program that does this perfectly. They all have their quirks. They're all going to have problems with overcrowding and overlapping. You will have to go in and fix things yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do a design for free, so you can kind of at least get started and find out whether or not that's something you actually want to kind of start thinking about investing in. So we're going to pop into Inkscape, and we're going to upload an image into Inkscape and translate that into an object so that we can work with it. So I have gone ahead, I'm going to go to import here. I've gone ahead and downloaded a very simple graphic of a heart to work with today to pull our pattern from. So there's our heart. Now, when working with a vector program like this, basically anything that you import into it, if you grabbed a clip art online or whatever, it's kind of like a foreign body that comes in here, and Inkscape's like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that? It's kind of seeing it right now as a block. It's not pulling any curve information off of this image until we tell it to translate it to a vector. And with Inkscape, it's literally as simple as right-clicking on the object and going to trace bitmap. It's going to pull up a dialog box here. And these settings over here with threshold and whatnot, with something this clear and simple, you really don't have to play with that too much. But if you do ever want to get into designing with something that's got multiple colors or maybe a little more complex design, you can play with these settings and get clearer results than you're ever going to find on any sort of website that offers to translate SVGs or whatever little gimmicky thing they try to pull off. So this is a very powerful program, just like Illustrator is, in the sense that you can translate a lot of things, maybe not all, but a lot of things into vectors that you can use with your cutter. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK on this guy, and what that does is it creates a duplicate for me. So now I have this very clean looking heart shape, which is now basically a vector drawing pulled from the information that we got off of the original image. So I don't need this anymore. I'm going to toss that, and I'm just going to work with this heart. Now when we get started with doing a template for a rhinestone design, or a design for a rhinestone template I should say, we always want to keep in mind that you want to design at the size that you're going to be cutting it at, because once you place the holes down into this design, any adjustment you make is going to deform the holes, change the size. It's not going to work for your template. So go ahead and start off with where you want to be before you start placing your holes down. So up here in the center left, you've got your dimensions. We've got width and height. Right now they're unlocked, and I'm going to change these to whole numbers. Right now my width is 5.237. I'm just going to switch that to a 5, and I'm going to go over here and do a 4 on my height, and hit tab, and there we go. Now mine's a little bit squashed looking. You don't have to do that, but the reason why I do that is basically because Cricut does, or Design Space I should say, does have a wonky issue with SVGs that you create in Inkscape, and for whatever reason it likes to resize things, which again, that's not a good thing to do when you're working with rhinestones. So I like to keep my numbers simple so that I can go in and kind of, you know, fix the issue that Design Space throws at me later. Alright, so we've got our information here with this vector heart shape. So what that has done for me, as opposed to having just a PNG sitting there that's not going to give me any information, is this is giving me information about the curves, the angles, you know, how far this line stretches, and that gives me a base to kind of work with when I start to lay down my holes. So I'm going to need a mock hole, so I'm going to go over here to my circle tool, and I'm going to hit Control, hold that down, and drag out a perfect circle. And I'm going to brighten that up a little bit so we can see it contrast with that black. Okay, so right now obviously it's a little too large for a rhinestone, so I want to switch this over to millimeters, and I want to lock my dimensions back, and I'm going to change this to a 2.8. I believe that most SS10 rhinestones are like a 2.6 in diameter. So 2.8 is probably good. You might even go slightly higher than that. I would always do a test cut before you actually do an entire template cut. Make sure that whatever stones you're using are going to fit in that template properly. But 2.6 is about the right size, so you want to go slightly larger than that. And I'm going to make, with Control C and Control V, I'm going to make several duplicates of this hole, because once I tell it to do what I need it to do, these little holes are going to vanish, and we're going to have to repeat this process several times. Okay, so I'm going to take my heart and I'm going to grab one of these holes by holding down Shift, and then I'm going to go up to Extensions, Generate from Path, and I'm going to do Scatter, and I want to make sure that my space between copies is set to about a 2, and then I'll hit Apply. And that runs all of those holes around the parameter of that heart. So what I'm going to do now is I need to basically shrink this heart down, because if I run it again, obviously it's not going to go inside the heart because it's trying to trace the heart with these circles. So I need this heart to get a little bit smaller and smaller each time that I go in, so that I can start to fill that heart shape up. And I'm just going to do this a few times just for an example's sake, I'd take way too long if I sat here and tried to do the whole thing. So I'm just going to give you the basic ideas on how you would achieve this. So on the bottom right corner, you have a preferences button. We're going to click that first off because we want to check under behavior and go to steps and make sure that our inset and outset is set to a 3. I think by default it's probably a 2. So we set that first, and then we go back, select our heart, go to path, and do inset, and that brings it in. And now we can just kind of grab the hole again and the heart together and do the same process we did earlier with the generate from path and scatter, and it's going to trace that heart again. And whoops, I did not mean to press that twice. Okay, so we're just going to keep doing this and shrinking down the heart and then grabbing the hole and generating from path and scattering it and filling that border with the holes. So, and the reason why I'm doing this just a few times is because you're going to start seeing that this thing is going to start to overlap. It's going to crowd, and that's going to happen with any program that you use that does rhinestones. They basically all work off of a script that's run inside of another program. And this is pretty much what that process looks like. It just does it a lot faster for you. That's the only real benefit for having one of those rhinestone programs, is that it will just do this for you automatically after you tell it to, rather than you having to go in and do this one row at a time. But they all have issues. There is no single program that does this perfectly. You will always have to go in and fix crowding issues that happen whenever you're running through a template or building your own template. You're going to have things like this. You're going to have things like the double holes showing up right here, overlapped, getting really, really close together in some spaces. So we need to be able to fix that. And right now what we did is we basically told Inkscape to create for us these, let's see how many we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these 5 different rows, which are all considered objects on their own. So I'll show you. If I click this bottommost row here and pull it apart, it is own object, basically. So we need all of those ungrouped so that we can fix them. So we just go in and right click and ungroup. I have tried to do this by selecting all of them at the same time and ungrouping, and it doesn't seem to work. It seems like we have to go row by row and ungroup them, which is a little bit of a pain. So I'll probably go ahead and just edit that part out. Okay, and boom, we're done. The magic of editing, right? That's great. Everything is separated and everything is ungrouped. So at this point, I can just go in and pick and choose whatever dot is kind of out of line, or if there's anything overlapping, I can delete them. And basically, I'm just going to go in and nudge these around until I'm happy with the look of it. Now, I will say that Magic Flock is extremely durable. It is okay if you get some stones or some of these holes very, very close to each other. It's not going to really tear your design, but just for the sake of trying to make everything look a little more uniform, you probably want to go in and fix these a little bit to your liking. And you know, you can always Control-C, Control-V and add a dot if you have a gap somewhere, just like that. So that is the basics on how to get rolling with getting your holes laid out around an object. And this will work for pretty much any object that you can translate into Inkscape, including text that you translate into an object. Okay, so the next step is going to be to put this guy on some sort of a backing. We're going to actually create the box now that is going to represent our template. So I'm just going to draw a box over this and change the color. I'll go to Object and lower to bottom. And then now I'm going to line it up a little bit, but the first thing I'm going to do with this actually is I'm going to change the size. I'm going to go into inches. I'm going to try to get this as close to a whole number as I can on these. I need to unlock my dimensions. 5.75 by 5, I guess. We'll try that, see what that looks like. Alright, that's fine. And the reason why I do this is because Inkscape does screw with, or sorry, Design Space does seem to screw with the sizes when you upload stuff in there. So I just want to kind of keep it a number that I can easily come back to and remember and type into Design Space whenever I have it uploaded. All right. Oh, okay. I skipped a step. Let me back up a second. I got to get this box off of here. The next thing that I want to do is grab all of these dots that I created that are now ungrouped, and I want to go to Path and Union. And that basically does the same function as Design Space does whenever you hit Weld. It's kind of the same thing. So it turns it into one object, and at this point everything will move when I grab one of the dots. So I'm going to let that process for a second. It's not the fastest program in the world, but it's open source and it's free, so you know, can't complain too much. Still a pretty good program, especially for being free. Okay, so ooh, I missed some dots there. How did I do that? That's okay. Yeah, that gap right there is just, it's nothing. The dots didn't disappear. It's just the way that my computer is handling processing stuff right now for some reason. All right, I just went back and hit Union and grabbed the other 3 dots that I somehow missed. So now everything's good. I'm going to layer that back on top, or on bottom, I should say, and I'm going to grab both of those, go to Path, and do, difference. That's basically going to cut the front object from the back object, and that's pretty much our template right there. It's all good to go. So now I want to do File and Save As, and I will drop that as Heart as an SVG. It's already set to SVG. I'm just going to save it just like that, and then we're going to pop over here to Design Space, and I'm going to upload the SVG that we just made. Heart. There we go. Yes, and upload. And you'll see what I mean when we put this in here. So it was like 5 something, I think, and now it's sitting at 13.4. It's just, it blows it up so huge, and I'm not really sure why that is, but it's something to keep in mind whenever you push it over to Design Space. You want to make sure that you have written down, at the very least, the actual dimensions, final dimensions when you were done. So we had 5.75 on width in the original image, so I'm going to go back and put 5.75 in here. Make sure that my dimensions are locked and hit Tab, and there we go. So now we have a usable template in Design Space. So that's the basics on how to get rolling with doing that, and like I said, it does work for pretty much any object. You can use the same techniques to get started. You can change the color of the holes if you wanted to do a multi-layer like I have lined out back here. And I do recommend that if you go that route, that whenever you do make your boxes, you go ahead and make them the exact same size. And the reason why is because this is what lines up your artwork. So for example, if you're doing your white layer here and you've got your transfer tape kind of buckled down onto your board over here, and you've got your white stones laid into this, you would lay down your tape, grab all your white stones, and then you would immediately layer your next layer on top of that and just completely line that up. And then you would layer your blue in here, drop your transfer tape, which hasn't moved because it's stuck to the board. That's the technique we use to do that. Make sure everything lines up perfectly. So that's very important to keep in mind if you're doing multi-layer. You want to make sure that your boxes are exactly the same, because that is what you're using to measure if you are lined up with your design or not. Okay. So then, I think that's going to pretty much cover what I was trying to focus on right now in this particular video. I am going to show you the websites really quickly. This is the Rhinestone world where I do most of my ordering. It's a great resource if you're not anywhere near somebody that sells rhinestone supplies. They are fantastic. Their products are really durable, and they're just good quality products. I've never had an issue with them. I've worked with them for about 2 years now. And if you don't have anybody that's local, this is a great option for you. Also, if you are still interested in doing a program that will help you design the rhinestones, I'm just going to say they're not going to do it perfect like I said, but there are programs that can do it faster for you using these scripts. And one of the ones I see recommended the most is this one called Sure Cuts a Lot. And I do not have this program, never worked with it, not familiar with it. I just hear it mentioned over and over and over again. So that might be something that you should look into. Just watch a few YouTube videos or whatever. It is probably one of the most inexpensive options out there for people that want to do rhinestone designs. I believe it's around $60. Now with the Rhinestone World, the reason why that one wound up being more expensive for me is because they actually run their script through a program called Corel, which I did not have at the time. That program alone cost me $300, and then it was whatever they charged me for their script that ran through Corel. So I wound up spending like almost $400. And honestly, I don't even think that was really necessary. Whenever you can, if you have patience, you can build these yourself in your own program, especially something free like Inkscape, or you can hop over here and check out this particular program for $60, which is standalone, and you don't need anything else to run it, to my knowledge. All right, so that's going to pretty much sum up that video. I hope you got something out of it. If you have any questions, if I didn't cover something in as much detail as you would like, then please let me know. Just leave me a comment. I'll see if I can answer your questions to the best of my ability. And also, I'd like to encourage anybody that is kind of into doing or has a little bit of familiarity with Inkscape anyway, to pop on. If you want to be able to get on here and show us how to do like a multi-layer design in Inkscape, you're probably a little more familiar with that than I am. I can do something on Illustrator to that effect, but Inkscape, I'm still kind of trying to figure out their UI, so I don't know a ton about it. But yeah, if you have any tutorials you would like to share, please feel free to do so in the group. And that's going to be it for me today. You guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next time.